supportive
Okay.
housing, very cleverly. So there are about 70,000 units of supportive housing around the state. Many of them are scattered site in our upstate environments, but a large proportion are either mixed development projects or that are a percentage of them are supportive or fully supportive projects. Anyway, my continuum of care background goes back to working on the Syracuse Onondaga County Continuum of Care back in the early days. Hi, Sarah. I see you're on for representing the HMIS. And also worked with the Utica, etc., continuum of care for a number of years. Uh, got picked up by the network some 20 some odd years ago to actually do some advocacy around the continuum of care program. Uh, in Washington at the time, my congressman, Jim Walsh from Syracuse, was lead appropriator. He was a moderate Republican. I remember those. And so they brought us down to DC to advocate for something pretty technical that I vaguely remember around the need to renew what we used to call shelter plus care, but now we're calling rental assistance programs annually. And so I've been with the network for over 20 years, as I said, and I'm here today really to talk about the continuum of care state of play, which, as Lydia alluded to, is changing minute by minute. I think this presentation would have been different on Monday than it is today. But, welcome to the first day of this latest government shutdown, which is almost feels like a little bit of a reprieve. And forgive me, I'm going to throw a lot of balls up into the air to kind of discuss where we are at with this particular issue. The continuum of care is not the biggest issue in the overall federal budget fight. It's most near and dear to the heart of those that work on housing and homelessness, such as this group right here. So there are a lot of things going on across all government agencies, but let's just stay focused on this particular topic for now. So this would have been the first day of the fiscal year 2026 budget, if we had a budget in place, which we don't. Uh, Even if we had a continuing resolution, which is the typical solution that happens around this time, to continue funding at present levels, uh, in order to keep the government running, we would still be negotiating the budget stuff in DC around the continuum of care and everything else. So we're in shutdown, and that means that a lot of things are going to be pending. And we're in a shutdown after a year continuing resolutions, so things have been pretty static um, going forward. Uh, Right now, with reference to the upcoming budget, looking forward into the future, um, we several steps have been taken. The president released kind of
You have to
broad
go
stroke
to the weekends
parameters.
to escape from reality.
I'm sorry, somebody is talking, or I'm hearing somebody. But Oh, let's see. We lost my train of thought. So, all right, the president proposed some broad parameters of what he wanted to see in a budget on the HUD side. Early in the year, it was really kind of frightening, but the parameters that they put forward kind of have continued to resonate at the administrative level. They spoke of a desire to cut a lot of federal funding and block grant it to the state, uh, you know, resulting in about, a 50% loss of overall rental assistance, both the continuum of care-based rental assistance and broader Section 8 public housing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The idea was embedded in that is that uh, they wanted to move to a shorter term solution to or sort of shorter term rental assistance so that no one would be guaranteed lifelong rental assistance. Everybody will be uh, working on pulling themselves up into out of poverty into the mainstream, become more employed, and that there wouldn't be a perpetual handout. You know the drill. Um, so that it was included also a rejection of the housing first concepts that that we've been building on and have been proven to be a successful intervention on homelessness now for decades. They wanted to reject that in favor of the carrot and stick approach. Uh, all of the homeless housing should be based on a recovery-oriented model, et cetera. So both the Senate and the House kind of rejected out of hand that preliminary budget and put forward a fairly normal appropriation for McKinney-Vento. So the House version contained a slight modest increase. The Senate version contained a larger increase, up to from 4.1 to 4.5 billion dollars. Uh, I always like to harken back when I was working on this. I was hoping that we could push the when we started doing this. I was hoping we could push it over the 2 billion mark. So this program has grown historically every year, and has always been A, bipartisan, B, widely regarded as a best practice, uh, and so that and one of HUD's best functioning programs. All right, so here we are. We're stalled temporarily, and what we've been working on as a solution to not the upcoming budget, but a solution that would affect the FY25 budget that should be in play today. There is, and I'm sure Liddy, I don't, you guys have covered the uh, reemergence of the new NOFO that Secretary Turner put out a memo on July 3rd, right before the national holiday, uh, changing course and doing all the, kind of flagging that they're going to do all the things that I just mentioned, more or less. And then uh, moving from what we were told was going to be a biennial process for the NOFA, we really had advocated a lot to have that change implemented and had finally agreed to it last year. So this would have been the second year of a 2-year process, not requiring a full NOFO, and really giving Liddy and all the continuing care the opportunity to work through the process, implement new programs, do better program evaluation, and just not always have to be in that mode of pulling together doing the ginormous effort that you're well aware of around preparing this very complicated NOFO with many different uh, agencies providing input and evaluation and all that good stuff. So, um, we've been waiting for the new, anxiously for this new NOFO to drop. And now that it's October 1st and the government's shut down, doesn't look like it's going to happen, in a timely fashion. Who knows how long there will be a government shutdown, but I don't think they have the capability to put out an OFO while the government is shut down. Uh, and so what we've been advocating for, I'm going to put in the chat at some point when put down some of the balls that I'm throwing up in the air. Uh, our current advocacy effort is around the continuing resolution that would it's a part of the bill that was added in the Senate version of the continuing resolution that didn't pass the Senate. and was also not part of the House version that passed the House. The House wanted to do a clean CR, and the Senate didn't vote in favor of that either. So, Section 166 would essentially tell HUD to just renew all of the existing projects for 1 year while they figure out what it is that, actually they would like to accomplish. Because here's the deal. It's October while the federal budget cycle starts in October, the COC funding cycle starts in the calendar year. So the funding that has already been appropriated for last year that would have been covered by this upcoming NOFO needs to start to flow to the awarded agencies starting in January 1st. And it's whenever your contract is due. So there's a lot of concern because of what I'm saying and the way the federal government is treating this stuff, that there's going to be a gap. January 1st is going to hit, and folks are not going to know whether or not any of their projects are going to be funded for calendar year 2026. That's rental assistance that it's paid to the landlords. It's rental assistance and other stuff that goes to non-for-profits to provide supportive housing. And, so it would make a lot of sense to just do that while they figure out what kind of pain and punishment they want to actually put us through. But yeah, you understand the assumptions there that they actually care about minimizing the pain and suffering that non-for-profits that do supportive housing are is going to, make a difference to the federal government, and it seems to want to impose a lot of draconian things. So we are still hopeful that the Senate version will carry the day and that they will do this. The longer the clock ticks, the more likelihood I think that they will just want to wait till next year in order to do a full NOFO. But it's really incumbent on the Senate, and happy to say that Senator Gillibrand has been really on point with this particular issue. She's been one of our strongest advocates on the Senate to see that it was included in their version of the continuing resolution. She is the ranking member on the HUD Appropriations Subcommittee, so she's assumed a pretty powerful role and is taking it really seriously. So good on her for that. She also did a letter along with Patty Murray to the Office of the Inspector General that I'll get to in a little bit, uh, eh, with a similar focus on COC related stuff. So, let's focus on. I don't. Liddy, should I stop and entertain questions, or should I just ramble on here for a while?
I don't, do people, so thank you. That was a lot
Yeah,
of information. Some of it, like, I think we're all coming to it from different places. So
yeah,
please ask questions. If you have questions now, feel free to raise your hand and ask questions or put them in the chat. I'm pretty good at keeping track of the chat while we go. Do people
great.
have questions about all of that, like sort of big picture stuff that was just said?
Yeah, let me tie down one other quick point. So there's been a lot of rumors about what's going to be in the new NOFO. Uh, Half of it colored by some things that have happened in the last 9 months of this administration, but the rumors are pretty rife that they're likely to impose a 30% cap on permanent supportive housing. I think I don't need to tell you guys what that means to your continuum. My understanding is that virtually all of the funding that isn't going to infrastructure, HMIS, or planning is going to permanent supportive housing at this point in time. Lowering that, which is almost 90% nationally, is of the COC funding is going to permanent supportive housing. To lower it to 30 percent means that thousands and thousands, we estimate like 17,000 people in New York will lose their housing as a result of that, lose the permanency of their housing. So that is really a game changer and a major threat. And then the other threats that are going to likely be included in uh, the NOFO are related to the ideological kinds of issues that we've seen the government really put forward every chance they get in a number of different versions to try to enforce a standard that I think has long been rejected. You know, an example that we've heard for this particular uh, upcoming NOFO would be that no funding would go to any group that has ever done anything to support trans people's rights. Just, I mean, that's like, you know, just one egregious example among 100. So I'll take a breath, see if there's anything that people are wondering about. I realize that this is, you know, I'm explaining a lot of history and looking forward and looking backward at the same time. So anything, any curiosities here? Not seeing anything. Okay. We'll have to keep going then. That's fine. So we are, that gives you a view of what we're looking forward to with reference to this NOFO and the upcoming competitive process. It gives you a view of the continuing resolution and what we would hope going forward. I want to revisit the COC builds program if I can have the luxury of doing that, because that's one of those things that is, you know, kind of gives us real a real sense of where the administration is at. And the COC builds program, now we're going way back in time. Set your dials for FY 2023. HUD and did a one-time capital funding to build permanent supportive housing program that they cleverly called COC builds. And that was $175 million that they put out in 2024, soliciting in a competitive national competition proposals to do special supportive housing projects. Estimate was that they were going to do about 25 projects nationally. So it was unusual, it was appreciated. It wasn't going to change the world very much, but many groups applied for it. The calendar got to the end of 2024. The Biden administration had in hand we've been told they had the list of awardees ready to rock and roll, but they never announced it until the new administration took over, and the new administration took a look and said, we're not going to do this. We're going to do a new NOFO. So this is the COC Builds Round 2, announced in May. Applications were due back in June. The principal reason why they wanted to do a new NOFO is so that they could try to implement some of their uh, ideological agenda, particularly don't do anything that smacks of DEI, for example, because they've been trying to put that forward since the beginning of the administration. And so TikTok, it gets to be August, and there is this the Senate appropriators were informed that and leadership were that awards were ready to be announced, and there were actually 14 national awardees. Oh, by the way, they lowered it from 175 million to 75 million to make sure they had enough funding in place to pay the rent during the continuing resolution that we are just getting out of, so that, you know, the rents go up and they needed to make adjustments without having any additional funding. That's how they chose to do it. So senators got word that there were awardees, and of course, any self-respecting senator that has awardees in their state reached out to them to congratulate them, only to find out that HUD changed their mind. That they didn't want to do the second round, the second iteration of the awards, for, you know, reasons that, you know, should be pretty obvious. So they pulled back and they said, all right, we're going to do a new third version of the RFP, acknowledging that this funding would actually expire yesterday. So they put out a really like the most unusual are NOFO that you could ever possibly put out. Essentially, it was, we're going to change who we said we're going to serve and limit it to seniors and people with physical disabilities. The prior to was more of a focus on chronic homelessness. And in order to get the funding, oh, by the way, the deadline is a week from now. So you got a week to do the new NOFO. And we're basically going to fund the first 9 groups that apply to that can say yes to the merit-based questions. You can only guess what the merit-based questions might have been, but you have to agree that you won't do any harm reduction activities as an agency. So if your agency is doing needle exchange and you're applying for this funding as under a separate contract, you wouldn't be eligible. If your communities are sanctuary communities, local, federal, and the local, state, county, etc., you would not be eligible. If you don't, if you don't have anti-camping, quote unquote, restrictions locally or statewide, then you wouldn't be eligible. You have to agree to have an open door policy if ICE comes knocking. The list goes on and on. You know, so all of those things, no one in New York State could legitimately say yes to all those questions. So, and New York is one of 38 states that falls into that category. So, you know, no one really in New York was going to be able to win this funding in the third round. And in fact, just to add fuel to the fire that I'm trying to start here, the 2 groups in New York that received acknowledgement that they were going to get the funding in the second iteration were Salvation Army had a proposal in Buffalo. People are familiar with the Salvation Army and the work they do. And then St. Regis Native territory up on the St. Lawrence River had a project that they applied to. So this is an example of the federal government, you know, really reneging on their promises to tribal areas. Probably the first time that's ever happened, he said very sarcastically. So here we are now. Of course, immediately when this came out, there was a lawsuit filed. It was filed on the group by a group from Rhode Island that had standing because they were on the list of projects that were funded in the second iteration and the National Alliance on Homelessness. So that stopped things while there's while they decide on the merits of the lawsuit, probably in December. Uh, the hope would be that maybe that they fund the existing programs, but the key thing in the lawsuit is it keeps the funding from reverting back to the Treasury while they decide on the merits of the case. And that's the second major lawsuit that has been in our particular world. The first came when Secretary Turner early on, and I don't know if you guys experienced this, when it came time to renew or do the new contracts for awardees from the preceding year, that process that I talked about a little bit, um, as it would relate to next year. The secretary wanted groups to agree to some of the same similar types of stipulations uh, that were in that I discussed already, and including the famous you have to not only agree to these things, but any future executive orders you have to agree to comply with in advance. So there was a pushback in a lawsuit that was filed in King County, Washington State, that, you know, temporary restraining order that stopped that from being implemented. So contracts have moved forward. I think there's three different subsets of what groups have done. Some groups have refused to sign and they're still getting paid while it's under litigation. Some groups have agreed, but knowing that it's not going to be enforced until the litigation is resolved. And at least one group that I'm aware of in New York State, said, "We can't do this. We're going to give back the money." So that's how we started the year. That's how I'm going to end this part of the presentation, and hopefully I've stimulated some questions, comments, concerns. I'm going to put in the chat now, hopefully. We have a call to action that we're doing around that section 166 piece and the continuing resolution. And I will get that in there in a second. There it goes. So quiz me.
I want to provide just a little context. I put this in the chat for people here in Tompkins County, that our continuum of care did apply in that COC builds funding competition in both of the first rounds. And we applied for a really exciting and innovative project that really would have been very much in HUD's wheelhouse in any prior past year, in a partnership with Reach Medical. When this third notice of funding opportunity came out, it was very clear that we did not have and could not have an eligible project, even if New York State met that merit review. And it was like really our first, no, not our first, because I read Project 2025, but one of our early glimpses into what the plans were for how permanent, how and if permanent supportive housing was going to be viewed by HUD going forward. So it was our first sort of really big taste of what the future plan is. And it does, I think, relate directly to what's happening for the future of permanent supportive housing. Would you agree, Steve, that this is a canary in the coal mine for the future of where HUD is going with?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, many things to worry about, but I think the biggest concern is going forward, will there be a pro rata need? So, HUD, the COC has built over time based on demographic issues, and what you've done and what you need to renew is kind of the formula by which the funding comes to each continuum. There's a competitive factor that they've been working into it over the last 10 years. The tiering system that I'm sure everybody loves to hate. But that was putting maybe 5% of your projects at risk, which is particularly hard in Tompkins County where you don't have many projects and it's hard to carve out 5%. So that's been a problem, but the difference between 5% putting at risk and what 90 to 70% being put at risk is terrifying. And, from the COC bills, you got a sense that they really didn't, despite the fact that there was lip service to um, actually addressing, having the funding flow to where the needs were the greatest. This was a mechanism to have funding flow to, you know, places that were more red than blue, to put it mildly.
What's next, Steve?
What's next?
Yeah.
Oh, in terms of this discussion, no other questions here? I mean, a couple of different things. I would say so, you know, you our focus is on the Senate right now. Like I said, Senator Gillibrand has been a champion so far. She did do a letter with Patty Murray requesting that the Office of the Inspector General investigate the decision to not follow through with the awards on the COC bill projects. So we'll see where that goes. We're awaiting we're waiting to see whatever happens next on those particular pieces of legislation that I discussed. The King County one is really expanded over time to include a lot of different it became more than just the HUD continuum of care. There was a transportation piece. There was a HUD local government piece that was added. The city of Rochester jumped on board, um, requesting that their block granted funding to the city of Rochester would not be subject to the administrative contractual changes that Secretary Turner was trying to implement. So we'll see what happens when that unwinds. One of the catches is you would have to be party to the lawsuit right now while it's being evaluated. And it's going through the process in order to be protected by that lawsuit. So everyone on this call, I think this is fair to say, that's not a unit of local government would only units of local and state government signed on to this. So New York City signed on for the continuum of care, which was a really great step. The city has always kind of skewed involved on the advocacy side, but it's all very much up in the air. And if you're not party to the lawsuit, then you are at some risk for having this contract language um, lead to be having funds withheld. So far, HUD hasn't done that because they're still negotiating and they're not winning in any way, shape, or form in terms of that legislation. And it's probably too soon to tell what's going to happen with COC bills. And that particular legislation, it's a smaller. I like to bring it up because it really it is the canary in the coal mine, to agree with you, Liddy. And it's also just so egregiously everything, from doing a NOFO in 1 week to moving from a probably imperfect NOFO merit analysis that looked at factors like demographic factors in terms of, overall community response to homelessness and the numbers of folks that were homeless in the community and a bunch of other stuff that makes logical sense to you have to agree to these 9 ideological things in order to, be eligible. Uh, Really tells us a lot about where this government is at. And, know for sure that if this is happening in HUD world, it's happening in HHS world and everywhere else that they can, transportation, for gosh sakes, are being asked to stick to the same uh, ideology. So where we go from here is we keep advocating. You guys have Josh Riley is your congressman if you're in Tompkins County. He's going to be supportive of all,
Yeah.
all the things that we're advocating for. But it turns out that House Democrats are in the minority and the Republicans are hewing to whatever the president wants for the most part. We've been doing a lot of work with the Republican um, delegation. That's kind of been one of our uh, long-term focuses. I mentioned that, harkening back 20 some odd years ago when we were working with a bipartisan, moderate Republican based focus, and there used to be about at least 10 Republicans, including several from New York, that were really strong advocates for the continuum of care funding. Now there may be one, but I hesitate to name who it is. uh, and we really, I mean, if we could convert some Republicans, that would be amazing. I mean, I think there's a lot of work needs to be done. Your closest, if there's anybody from outside of county that's living in Tenney's district or Langworthy's district, we should talk, particularly if you have any kind of relationship with them, um, because we've been working pretty diligently to educate them about this. We've done rallies in 4 different Republican districts around continuum of care stuff, but it's been really an uphill battle, to be perfectly honest with you. So I mean, stay tuned to, Liddy, I don't know if you share our alerts when we send them out, but please continue to do that. Please click on the links I sent you. There's 2 in there where you can actually uh, use the platforms, that one of the ones that we have, and then I put another one on COC Builds that defunded group from Minnesota put out, calling on HUD to honor the second round. So if you feel like doing that, that will send a letter to our 2 senators, who, we have to keep pressing because that they've got the most juice so far. Ooh, what else?
What do you think the timeline is like? So like in terms, I know that's a hard question, but like if things continue on the trajectory that they're on, how many more years of continuum of care, evidence-based programs like permanent supportive housing are left before we would have to begin doing that transitional housing only street outreach COC
Hmm.
model?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the reason why we've been pushing so hard to get a 1-year extension of all the renewal rental assistance projects is just to buy an extra year, which would lead us to, what would happen as a result of the NOFO that we've been talking about, the anticipated NOFO, which I would be stunned if there wasn't more litigation coming out as a result of whatever is in that NOFO. Not a lawyer. I always like to claim that up front, but it seems like there's going to be some real chances to challenge whatever they put out. Although the counter argument would be that HUD is looking at this through lawyerly eyes this time more than any of the other examples that we cited here today, where they just like threw spaghetti against the wall to see what might stick. Um, so harken back to the Hearth Act. You remember that? those are the regulations that guide the COC ship forward. And that's probably the locus of where challenges might be able to originate. Uh, Turns out that, the government can't, shocking, I know. Government can't just do whatever the heck it wants. Um, One of the principles in the King County lawsuit is that, decisions can't be arbitrary and capricious. They have to be changes have to be the result of thoughtful analysis. So, um, we shall see. And, in particular, the nuts and bolts of what the Hearth Act says that communities should be doing. Pro rata need is one thing, et cetera. That's all something that might throw a monkey wrench in the process of changing things around. Then the other question is, how quickly can you switch to calling your permanent housing transitional and moving forward from that? I don't know. That's a debate for you guys to have. It's an interesting thing to contemplate. Um, I always like to say at this particular juncture that, hey, we're all only on this earth for a short period of time. So isn't everything transitional in reality? Um, so, but, transitional means something very specific according to the regulation that, 2 years or less. And the regulation, because I looked this up yesterday, also says that HUD can um, stop funding if you fall below achieving the goal of 50% of the people transitioning out of transitional housing in a 2-year period. So that's interesting. But theoretically, that could buy you a couple of years, right, Lenny? If you wanted to, the embedded COC question is, how much do you want to play the game, and how much do you want to your um, reality-based philosophical predispositions?
Thanks.
So what are you going to do now?
Well, I have one other question for you,
Sure.
and I hope other people have questions. It's a slightly different, I'm shifting gears a little bit, but beyond people experiencing chronic homelessness, who are some other stakeholders that would be impacted by a cut like this? I'm thinking about landlords, people at the state and county, funders at the state and county level, uh, budgets at those levels too. Like beyond it being like, okay, the federal government is, who beyond the people experiencing chronic homelessness can you envision being impacted by the changes?
Or people that are not chronically homeless but could become homeless as a result of massive cuts to rental assistance. So the homeless population should by all means increase given all the things that they're trying to do. That's A. B, landlords is an interesting topic. If you're paying rent to a private landlord in a scattered site model using continuum of care funding, how does that play itself out is a very good question. And which is, when do you start to flag for the landlords that you're working with that this is something that you're staring down the barrel at? Probably early next year is when it begins to emerge as a reality. And then the question would be, well, will the landlord care? Or will they just? I think the biggest thing is that there's still a process if you can't pay the rent because the federal government is shut down, or because the federal government is realigning their funding and taking it away from the Tompkins County community, what happens then? I think it certainly could have a negative effect on the relationships that you guys have built with landlords in order to be able to provide housing for people. Secondly, any tax credit project or other projects that where it's considered permanent housing, but the COC funding is embedded in it for rental assistance are going to be you would be out of compliance if you attempted to put forth a lease that requires additional compliance with additional treatment restrictions. That's a thing. I don't know how real that is, but I suspect that might affect some. I know it'll affect some rental assistance. Not sure that that's true in Tompkins County right now, because most of your rental assistance is embedded in a couple of projects, right?
Yeah, and most of our actual rental assistance is eShy.
Yeah. And we should, a couple of different things. You mentioned, what's the state response going to be to all this? And eShy is a good thing to change the subject to, which I wanted to do if I had the time. So, we would here in Albany, we certainly want to encourage the state to do everything they can to protect their investments. And that's part of our state advocacy agenda. We have had some really good support over the last few years from New York State, but New York State's going to be under a lot of pressure. We alluded to it ever so briefly. It's not just the threat for people losing their housing in this new scenario, it's the threat of people losing their health insurance, their SNAPS benefit, and all of the other things that's going to certainly lead to more intense poverty experience and therefore homelessness. Um, so, those and the state's got to look at all that stuff to see, what the hits they're going to take and how they're going to deal with it. But we continue to make the argument the state should do everything they can to protect what they've already invested in, including especially the eShy program. That will continue to be, large chunk of our state advocacy, that they not only honor their commitment to build more supportive housing, but also that they shore up the existing supportive housing both on the eShy side and on the NYSHIP side. For those of you who are paying assiduous attention to our advocacy platform, NYSHIP is the oldest supportive housing services funding that's TCA, for example. I know you guys get that particular funding, and hopefully you're going to see a substantial increase when OTDA announces their enhancements that they've requested and put out to you all. So, that was the first year of success in what we anticipated to be a 5-year plan going forward. What else? Who else is impacted?
Yeah, you do have one question, although it's about state level things. It
Oh, I
says,
love state level questions.
will currently approved state level rent subsidies be funded at least the current levels in FY 27?
State fiscal year
Yeah.
27.
You're talking about the state funded rental assistance program that they just
Yeah, I
rolled
guess
out?
you have mentioned people who, not just those who are literally homeless, but those who may be at risk of homelessness, and these sort of stabilizing influences like eShy or other, if not for permanent supportive housing a rent subsidy that are approved in the state budget every year. And with the federal cuts, I'm assuming the state can't backfill everything. And I'm just wondering, what may be on the chopping block and how to ensure if there's anything we can do at the local level that the current allocations are at least maintained. I don't know if you have ideas or insights about that.
Yeah, and, it's hard to predict the future in this stuff, but the state has, over the years, in terms of programs like eShy, like the OMH supportive housing portfolio, they haven't done anything other than grow. Arguably, they haven't grown enough to, you know, compete with the cost of living or anything else like that. But the eShy program in particular, it was, funded at 25,000 per unit per year. This year, it increased to 31,000. I don't see them going backwards on that. You need to have a certain level of funding in order to be able to have a deal pencil out. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The federal rental, the bulk of rental assistance in our world writ large is federally funded. Um, Housing choice vouchers and project-based vouchers. So those are under some significant threat as well. Although it doesn't appear like the House and the Senate have much of an appetite to uh, defund those. The administration certainly does. But certainly not going to grow. They don't grow. Those programs really don't grow in the ability to serve more people ever for the past couple of decades. But the hope is that principally that they won't be time limited, which would be a huge concern if everybody that was receiving that kind of assistance had 2 years to get a better job and move out. Um, so that's a concern. The state has a small rental assistance program that I'm not as familiar with. But I think that's got to be funded by annual appropriations. So we'll see. Certainly something we'd like to see grow um, going forward.
Okay, thank you.
That help?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
What else? Any other questions?
Do you predict that we'll see a rise in unsheltered homelessness?
What do you think I'm a wizard or something?
Yes.
Well, I would say if these things come to pass, we're likely to see a rise in homelessness. In New York, I think, have the capacity to make sure people have some form of a roof over their head. And then there's also this countervailing force um, that starts with Grants Pass and the desire on the part of the federal government to criminalize homelessness. We forgot to talk about that, for gosh sakes. There was an executive order somewhere in the recent past that did all of that and it encourages the local communities to develop procedures and policies that will, do street sweeps, that will eliminate encampments. And you guys have a fairly famous encampment in Ithaca. So, and I'm not sure if there's any updates on what's going on there, but I think that there's a lot of perceived pressure to clear encampments out. And, even to the point where I mentioned in the COC builds checklist that I love that, no camping in New York State. Tell it to the state parks was my first response. But, it's certainly, if I was going to say something cynical, Liddy, and I'm about to, just to flag. Yeah, I'd say, maybe less street homelessness and more incarceration, which
Yeah.
is necessarily a good,
I mean, that's just saying the quiet part out loud,
yeah,
Steve.
yeah. And, as we roll in, I will say this too, as we roll into 2026, we're looking to advocate, we're trying to put together, along with a lot of other partners, uh, like legislation to protect homeless people. Uh, f- you know, and if, we think maybe the governor would want to take up some of this, even though the governor has fallen into the side of the world that at least nominally wants to make it easier to send people to hospitals if they're not, if they're living out on the streets. So, but we're hopeful that we can craft some legislation with our partners that would protect homeless people from, make attacking a homeless person a hate crime and things like that. As well as putting forward, continuing to push forward on alternatives to a police response to people who are homeless and living out in the streets in favor of, we'll say, Daniel's Law, for example, that would provide social work and peers that are available to, do street outreach, which I'm sure you guys have something similar in Ithaca, right?
Yes. And we're working on developing it more.
Good.
Yeah.
So I would say anything that you've got that, demonstrates the success of that is, forward along to me. I know you're going to, when we're done listening to me ramble, we're going to do something about, what stories can we tell? So I think that
Yep.
that's the real point too. We're looking for data uh, always, and we're looking for stories that demonstrate, um, in this particular case, that COC programs are effective, that they change people's lives, that Housing First works. And, so happy to help as a general rule moving forward on helping to get local press and things like that. So if you're of a mind to do that, we can certainly help on our end, get the story crafted and placed in a way that makes sense and is comfortable for the person that's telling the story.
Thanks. What a great segue. So
Pay me later.
I noticed that people are pretty quiet today, and that's okay. And I am hoping that there are people here who are interested in starting to do some of that storytelling. So I put a few questions in the invitation and the agenda, and I can put it out there again. But um, if there are people here with lived experiences of homelessness, people who have lived in permanent supportive housing, you were the front of the line. I would love to hear from you first. And if otherwise, people who have worked in those programs have stories about impact, and sort of like what would it be like without these programs? Those are the kinds of stories that we're looking to practice telling and hearing and putting down on paper and sending around to our, as part of our advocacy. So I know this is a large room full of empty Zoom boxes, but if there's anybody here who feels like participating and telling their story, we would love to hear it. So I'm just going to be quiet for a second.
So I actually was homeless here in Ithaca before, fleeing domestic violence. And it was, I don't know, probably 10 years ago. So I stayed when we still had the shelter for that. I stayed there for a couple weeks, and then I got in through the youth outreach program, which is actually phenomenal. And they put me into the transitional housing. And for me anyway, it was great because that's how I got a jump at life and was able to get things because I had my son and he was like 2. So I've definitely done it, and all the systems in place to actually help people did in fact help me and my son. We were able to get what we needed so we could get the food we needed, have the shelter we needed. And through youth outreach, I also got job experience and got to work in the homeless shelter and be part of the groups and talk to people and hear other people's stories. So it was pretty cool, and it was, you know, life-changing and helpful for us.
Thank you. Perfect. We'll be calling you for our next advocacy calls.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can I share my story?
Of course.
So I work for Tompkins Community Action, and I'm one of the coordinators here at Asteri. My journey started in Tompkins Community Action. It was a domestic violence situation about 17 years ago. I was in nursing school and my husband tried to kill me. They immediately shipped me to Tompkins County. I went through the Advocacy Center. Through them, they connected me with Tompkins Community Action, who set me up with a housing choice voucher. Because I received Section 8, I was able to go to college, get a college degree. My children were enrolled in Head Start. From there, I became a cleaner through Tompkins Community Action. I worked my way up from a cleaner to a coordinator. I am still with the agency. This is my second time around, but because of Tompkins Community Action and the supportive housing program, I went from homelessness to not just a job, but a career. So I think that, these programs are very important. And with wraparound services, people can definitely go from, chronic homelessness to, living a life with purpose. And I'm grateful for the programs in Tompkins Community County.
Thank you so much.
And maybe I could briefly share mine. So I was homeless as a youth, single mom at a time when there weren't these services and everything was such a struggle. There was no place for me to go. I found myself having to live in less than ideal circumstances, and it took me nearly a lifetime to climb my way out of it. And I am so blessed to be working in this field and be able to be the person now that I wish I had had when I was younger. And I have seen some phenomenal successes because of these programs.
Thank you, Laura. Barb has put a little testimony in the chat. Thank you, Barb. Yeah, pretty powerful. And that meeting people where they are part is a theme, I think, in a lot of the stories that we've heard today and the stories that I hear regularly in settings is it's the sort of magic of housing first is that it meets people where they are. So it doesn't say you have to be something other than what you are today in order to receive these services. You can receive these services just how you are today, and we'll work with you to get you where you want to be or where we want you to be or whatever, however that works. And so I know I'm trying to work on better language and not using the word housing first anymore, but that's really a core function of continuum of care programs is that it doesn't require you to jump, you must be sober for X number of days. You must do this, you must do that. It says, okay, we're going to give you this base of housing and work with you as you build your future together and give you, things like tenant rights and all of those other things that we value about permanent supportive housing. But I know, so I have an interesting perspective because my entry point when I started in this work, one of the very first things I did was work to open a place to stay, which is a transitional housing program that's still around today. And I didn't really know anything. And I had a bunch of bad ideas, right? And so and got to see that this idea of like people are going to fit into a certain box and then we can serve them did not work in real life, and had to look. So we had very high thresholds when we first started serving people, but it didn't serve the people. We ended up realizing that we were not serving the people that we were trying to reach using those thresholds, and that if we could lower thresholds, we could actually make the difference we were looking to see. And then I learned a whole bunch of stuff about housing first, but people are allowed to change their minds and learn from evidence, and that's where this continuum of care model is really rich in evidence, and it's been studied over and over and over again. And it would be a shame to abandon it in favor of something that has actually been disproven and doesn't really work very well for the people that we all come to work every day to try to serve. Great. That's my little tiny testimony. I didn't plan to say that. Will there be stories collected? Sure. Would you like to? Well, yes, of course. Veronica, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, just about testimony. I don't have any personal experience to share myself, but I do want to say that at last night's Tompkins County Public Budget Forum, a bunch of people did come and share their experiences with, among other things, how like housing related wraparound services and transitional housing and permanent supportive housing. And big thank you to all those folks. And it was really powerful, and that was recorded if anyone wants to see.
Thank you. We are going to keep working on this. So this was not your only chance to tell these stories. And if you were sitting here thinking like, ooh, I don't really want to raise my hand, but I want to share something, please feel free to send me an email or follow up in the future, because I think that there's some very powerful stories in our community, and I think that we can sort of braid them all together to make a really good case for why continuing to support continuum of care model of programs works for our community. The other thing about COCs is they were designed to have this local, the idea was that you and your community know what's best for your community. So you are making the funding decisions using a local competition process. And so having these decisions made for every community in the United States at a federal level is counter to the way that continuums of care specifically were set up, which was look at your data, find out where your needs are, fund the programs that are performing well in your system, instead of like kind of a blanket approach. Great. I lost the chat there. I think Teresa, off top, do you have something you want to share, Teresa?
Yes, and I apologize for its being somewhat off topic, except I think one could regard it as homelessness prevention. I think we all know that one of the big problems in Tompkins County, especially the city of Ithaca, is lack of housing and lack of money to build housing that people can afford to live in. The feds, as we have been hearing, are dysfunctional. However, New York State has the ability to raise large sums of money, and New York State has a lot of those billionaires who are getting massive tax breaks from the feds. That is money that the state should tax for or dip into in some way for better purposes, like creating the housing that we need. Well, there is a bill in both the Assembly and the State Senate. At this point, it is called the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers bill, P-A-S-H-N-Y. There is campaigning for it going on at present. I know that this kind of campaigning is not what most of you do, but perhaps there is someone other than me on the call who goes in for that sort of work. And it would create a housing authority that could either use tax money or issue bonds, if that's the way it has to be done, to those bonds could be bought by the billionaires, by the way, to build green housing, union built. I've been asked for the bill numbers. I can remember this. Okay, what I was going to do was just put the initials in the chat and my email and say, get in touch with me directly. I can remember, I happen to be able to remember the Senate bill number. So there is also an Assembly bill number, and I don't have that. I think that's what I will do right now and say, if anybody is interested, they should email me. And probably put something like PASHNY in the subject line, since I may not know your name. So I will do that now. I'll give my name, my email, the Senate bill number. Nope.
Thanks. You can send it to me too, and I can send it along. Oh, you got
Well,
it.
it's going into the chat.
Okay.
If you save the chat ever, I don't know. A lot of times on these things, people put stuff in the chat and it just goes poof at the end when the oh no, now I'm spacing that.
Teresa, I think I found the bill. I put the assembly, the link to the assembly bill.
Well, maybe. I mean, its number changed at the beginning of the year. I think I've got the Senate bill number, but take these numbers with a grain of salt. And I don't looks
I think Carolyn's got it right.
no, well, it's not the Senate if it's an A bill.
But it's
That would be
those
the Assembly bill, but
cross-reference each other.
yeah, they do. So I think we probably have both numbers now, but
Thanks, Teresa. Are there other folks that want to share an advocacy related little quick update? If not, I do think we have a couple announcements. Yes, Andrea, I see your hand.
Hi there. I'm Andrea Champlin, A, she, her pronouns. I'm the statewide systems advocate at the Finger Lakes Independence Center. So I focus a lot of my time on the state level advocacy, specifically for how it impacts folks with disabilities. I have a mailing list. I also share out stuff that Liddy shares sometimes. I would love for you to join. I'm also going to put in both the budget and legislative priority agendas that I tend to work off of. I advocate for other issues, but those are kind of the lion's share of where my attention goes. It does include some housing stuff, and please reach out to me. I am also interested in connecting with other folks across the county that engage in state advocacy for collaboration, all the way from like, I don't know, I'm going to Albany Tuesday. Does anybody need to carpool? All the way to like, let's get like a Tompkins County statewide priority agenda to bring to legislators. So I'll put those in the chat, but please reach out to me and your dad about this stuff all day and would be happy to chat.
Thank you, Andrea. Steve, do you have any final thoughts? I'm about to switch to just little announcements.
No, I really appreciate the time, hopefully you can click on the links to reach out to your senators on the issues that we talked about. And I am in Albany, so happy to, if you want to follow up with me, I should put my email in the chat as well. We do our annual advocacy day. Next year is February 2nd. So you save the date on that, also known as Groundhog Day for those who celebrate. And that's it. Really appreciate your time. Love to help anyone that talked about a story about the possibility of getting press or doing an editorial, letter to the editor. These are things that we've worked on a lot, and we can certainly continue to keep beating the drum on all things housing related. And just to amplify what Teresa was saying too, that the state does have some housing resources that it's definitely worth looking at to address the needs. You mentioned bonds authority, and there should be more bonding authority that could combine with low-income housing tax credits to do more affordable housing. And they have some really interesting niche programs. So if you look at New York State Homes and Community Renewal website, they have some ability to help on a much smaller scale that might fit into the Ithaca community. To provide some incentives to create affordable housing for folks. So check that out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was a lot of information, very helpful. It was recorded. We will post it. I don't think there was anything too spicy said, so I feel okay. I know I saw that Shanna had to drop off, but she had an announcement that she was going to make. So I'm just going to put the flyer from a event that's called Pizza and Peers that she was going to announce. I just want to make sure people are aware that this is happening. That's in the chat for you. I'm doing that on her behalf. Reach out to whoever's on that flyer if you have questions, but it seems like a pretty cool networking and peer support group that is starting through the Mental Health Association. I had also reached out in advance, and I don't actually see, there's a lot of people here, to see if there was any update for our Code Blue shelter for this year. It sounds like there is not a huge update, but I do want to invite Dina to share what could be shared for now about Code Blue.
Many of you probably saw the press release from a couple weeks ago, but so Code Blue this year is going to be at the Found site on Cherry Street. So that's the location where the shelter build will eventually happen. But since that's not going to happen for another year or two, we're going to run Code Blue out of there. And our facilities folks are beginning to refit it so that it already has bathrooms. We'll be putting in showers so that we have showers this year. And then we're also in discussion with Volunteers of America to staff it and operate it this year. But nothing's official yet in terms of that. So that's all I got for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know people have started asking, people have started calling 211, and I wanted to make sure we just had like the most official update there was. Emily, I see your lovely hand raised.
Yeah, quick question. Last year, one of the noted opportunities was with accessibility. Will the bathrooms and showers be accessible?
Can't say for sure. I can't say for sure at this moment. I know that, yeah. I don't know. Brittany, do you know that answer to that?
I'm sorry, can you ask that one more time, Emily?
Yeah, I was curious if the bathrooms and/or showers being built would be accessible for those that
yes
require the use of mobility aids.
Yep. Yeah, the goal with them building any of the bathrooms or showers is to have them all be accessible so that if one's being used and it's being used by someone that doesn't need an accessible bathroom, there's still one available that is accessible. So the goal is to have, or the plan is to have all of them accessible.
Definitely an improvement. Thank you.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any updates or announcements? Shauna, oh good. I didn't see David, so I'm glad you're here. Yes.
Hi, yeah, I'm here on behalf of David. My name is Shauna Stevenson. I work for the Tompkins County Department of Planning and Sustainability. I'm the housing planner. And I just wanted to share that we are going to be having a Strong Towns local motive tour viewing and discussion. This is open to the public. You don't need to register, but it's recommended for folks who are interested in just talking about housing in general in our area and to go over kind of what Strong Towns is advocating for. For those who don't know, that's a group that really focuses on urbanism and how to build more affordable housing for everyone. So I can share a PDF in the chat, but essentially the first meeting is going to be October 3rd at the Ithaca Town Hall, so downtown Ithaca. And you can bring your lunch. It's from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. So that's 215 North Tioga Street. And it's going to be, let's see, I think it's 10 weeks. So essentially it's going to be set up to see what the presentation is, and then there'll be a discussion with the group who decides to attend. So I'm really excited to have this. And if you have any questions, you can send us an email at planningdepthousing@tompkins-co.org. And again, I'll share the PDF if you have if I can. So
I put it in the chat for you.
great. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. We have a cool community. Even when we're in distress, we learn and grow and are pretty interesting people. Any other announcements or updates for today? Shasta.
Good morning. A few updates. So today we have our HSC forum, which is part of the Age-Friendly Go Local initiative that is being supported by the Tompkins County Office of the Aging, Health Planning Council, as well as our partner, the Health Foundation of Western and Central New York. That is today from 3 to 5 p.m. at the Sproul Conference Center in the TC3 building up on the main campus there in Dryden. That being said, aging friendly or aging in place, health equity supports for folks that are aging. Anyone is welcome to come if you're supporting those types of initiatives. A reminder that we're aging from before the moment that we're born. So if you have an idea about how to support aging in any way, shape, or form, please do come and learn about funding opportunity that might be available through this cohort learning based funding opportunity. Additionally, we do have our workshop series, which is going to be moving forward in this fall season. So we have a lot of training on how to support folks in a human-centered way. We have a training coming up tomorrow. So if you're interested, please do sign up as soon as possible. That is for coaching, folks who are managers and are coaching teams or are looking to learn how to coach their teams. This will be tomorrow at 10 o'clock at the library with Amy Kohut. And then on the 16th of October, I'll be leading a session about psychological safety on teams. So learning how to promote psychological safety, what it is, and how to make sure that teams are feeling comfortable doing the things that they do every single day for our communities. Lastly, we do have Leading with Change. This is going to be a session with Krista Downey. Very specifically, this is about change management and nonprofits. Very general, but really whatever it means to you. So bring your biggest change. I'm sure that you've got some, and we'll be discussing what that might look like and how to support best in your organization. Thanks.
Thanks, Shasta. I have one teeny tiny little announcement, which is just that the United Way Alice Home Essentials program is now open. So this is very similar to anybody who remembers the United Way Alice program. It helps people with small needs. This version of the Alice program is targeted specifically to help support people with some of the housing stability needs. It can help folks with up to $500 one time for things like furniture, pots and pans, trash tags, cleaning supplies, sort of things. You can call 211 to find out more. It does have an eligibility requirement that the person has to attest to or have some stuff that shows that they have experienced homelessness in the 12 months prior to the call. So, and are living in Tompkins County and of a low income. I'm going to put a little flyer in the chat about that. I think the word is starting to spread about it, but it's newer and it is specifically about people experiencing homelessness. So I wanted to make sure people knew it was there. That's all I got. Oh wait, we do have one other little thing. So I made a little, Nick, say hi, Nick. Hi, Nick. Who's working with here at HSC in the coordinated entry lead and COC staff position, put together just like a little one pager that can help people who are looking for continuum of care public data. I have noticed that I get lots of data requests, many of which are just like publicly available on a website somewhere or on our website. So we just put together a little one pager. So people are like, know that they're going to be looking for these things. Here is where you find things like the point in time count, the housing inventory count, these annual homeless response system data points that we're collecting. I'm going to put this on our website, but you're the first people to get our one pager. Let us know if there's edits that need to be made. It's brand new. But we just want to make sure that data is available to anybody who wants it at their fingertips, especially stuff that's designed to be public. So that is a gift from me to you. All right. Thank you very much. You can ask the specifics of the Home Essentials program. You can talk through with 211. It's pretty flexible. And there is some attestation parts. So I think it can be workable for people who have a need. To answer Carolyn's question. Yeah, thank you. All right, everybody, it's 11:01. It's a weird day here on October 1st of 2025. Go out there and be awesome because we really need you all and you're great people. So thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Thank you, Steve, especially. Bye-bye.